Two trans women, biological men, dominated a women's cycling event, taking gold and silver. And there are a lot of people complaining that this is just unfair. Let's talk about it. So now let's start with the facts of the situation. Why do we separate men and women's sports?
Men have physical advantages over women. That's why we segregate women's sports and men's sports. It's the simple fact. Here's an example for you. Let's look at a sport like running. The fastest woman to ever run 100 meters is FloJo, and her time was 10 seconds, 0.49, and that was in 1998. The fastest woman ever to run that race. Where the fastest man, Usain Bolt, is at 9 seconds, 0.58, and he ran that in 2009. So now my question to you, where do you think FloJo, the fastest woman ever to run the 100-meter dash, where she would rank amongst the men? So here is the official ranking for the 100 meters, and as you can see, FloJo is number one with her time of 10.49 seconds, the fastest woman ever in the history of the world to run 100 meters. So now here are the men's ranking. Usain Bolt, he's number one with his 9.58 seconds. We just take FloJo's time and placed her on the men's chart. She would be tied for 7,090th place. Think about that. Over 7,000 men have run faster times than the fastest woman in the history of the sport. That is what we call the gender gap in sports.
Now, what you just heard are the facts, and that's the reality of the situation. Now, this is Tessa Johnson and Evelyn Williamson, two transgender female athletes, meaning they're biological men who identify as women. Now, they competed against men in the past and lost. Williamson herself competed with the men and didn't even place in the men's race against 39 other male cyclists. So now they both identify as women and have started dominating women's races. So this is U.S. Cycling's trans inclusion policy. Now, this policy allows participants to self-select their gender. Let me explain. See, in cycling, there are two major levels. There's the elite versus the non-elite competition level. Now, the non-elite competition levels are for amateurs. It's a level where you can choose whatever gender you want and you can compete in whichever category you want. Men can choose to compete against women and there's no problem. The elite competition levels are different because those are for professional competitors. Now, they compete at higher levels and for international competitions. Now, for elite competition, they follow the rules set by the International Cycling Union and the International Olympic Committee regarding transgender eligibility. Now, those bodies have banned biological men from competing in women's sports. Here's the news clip.
6 tonight, a rule change by the international body governing cycling changes the future for athletes who are transgender.
10 News reporter Vinay Simlot spoke with an athlete who won't be able to compete anymore because of this change. Vinay.
And John Robin, here's the difference. If you were a trans athlete, you could participate if the testosterone in your body was below this number for 2 years. But now, if you've transitioned after puberty, you cannot participate. 3 weeks after the Pro Road Championships in Knoxville and protests by elected leaders in Knox County.
We live in a world where truth is subjective.
People like Darren Johnson from Tennessee can't compete in elite cycling events anymore.
Our right to exist, our right to participate in the public sphere, to get the health care that we need, to go to the bathroom when we need to be able to toe the starting line, has been made contingent on other folks' opinions.
So transgender women or biological men can only compete in the non-elite or amateur competitions. So Tessa Johnson and Evelyn Williamson decided to compete against women in the amateur competitions since they weren't allowed to compete in the professional competitions. Now, Williamson has competed in both men's and women's categories and previously won first place in a race against women, but didn't place in a men's race against 39 other male cyclists. Now, even trans women who are breaking women's records are admitting that they have an unfair advantage when it comes to these competitions. For instance, here is the strongest woman in Canada that happens to be a biological male. She holds multiple women's weightlifting records, and she's going to tell us that fact.
Everyone was happy that I was there. And it really struck me that maybe my participation isn't necessarily fair. I mean, there's science, whatever, but people welcome me because I'm actually nice to people.
Now, even crazier, this women's champion even makes fun of how bad women are in powerlifting.
Why is women's bench so bad? I mean, not compared to me. We all know that I'm a tranny freak, so that doesn't count. And no, we're not talking about Mackenzie Lee. She's got little T-Rex arms and she's like 400 pounds of chest muscle, apparently. I mean, standard bench in powerlifting competition for women, I literally don't understand why it's so bad.
Let's rephrase that. Women's bench might be bad to you because you are a male who's gone through male puberty with a male amount of testosterone.
So now, what's the solution? Do we just let biological men compete against women? We know what will happen. Men will win. Some say we should open up a third category for trans women. But this option was recently boycotted because the trans community considered it bigotry.
The first races for transgender swimmers have been scrapped after no entries were received. It was supposed to take place at the World Cup in Berlin. Former NCAA swimmer Caitlin Wheeler joins me now. Let me see if I've got this right, Caitlin. They have these swim meets, this swim meet. They have a special category for trans athletes, and nobody showed up. I think I've got that right. You tell me what that tells you.
Of course they failed to get entries in for the meet. What man wouldn't want to compete against other men when they compete in the women's sports and dominate? I mean, men have larger heart muscles, they have higher bone density, they have higher testosterone levels, giving them an advantage. Let's look at what happened in Maine. There was a 16-year-old male who was ranked 172nd in the men's and started competing in the women's and is now ranked 4th. This just shows that there is an unfair advantage here. They're not here to make it fair, they're here to dominate.
But I mean, one of the solutions to this problem was that you have a special category where trans athletes compete amongst themselves. That doesn't work, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's not going to be satisfactory. They don't want a third category. That's not going to satisfy what they're looking for. Men want to invade women's sports. They're erasing women and destroying women's sports. Having a third category isn't going to solve anything at all.
What is the solution?
The solution is what we've always been doing, having a men's and women's category. It's about calling out these fantasies and these delusions and not affirming them. We're doing the opposite of standing up for truth. If we're affirming fantasies and not standing up for what's right anymore, we should have men's and women's sports. We've always had them, and we've always had them for a reason ever since Title IX was in place.
So it seems we're at an impasse. Trans women with male bodies demand to compete against women even with those advantages. And women demand to compete with women because of the unfair advantages men have over biological women. That's where we are now. Now, I think the trans community has got things twisted a little bit. I think they're confusing the social reality of being treated as a woman with the biological reality of actually being a woman. So understand this. If you are a trans woman, you want to be called miss, you want to wear dresses, use the female bathroom, all of that great stuff, everything that's afforded to women. Fine. Socially. But there's a physical reality about being a woman that we can't ignore. And they're combining the two to say, well, I am a woman. And you've probably heard that. Trans people say, I am a woman. And socially, that may be true. But in reality, it's not. And the distinction between the physical reality and the social reality, I think, comes to head when it comes to sports, because no one can deny those physical differences between men and women and those physical advantages men have over women. But tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section. Tell me where you disagree with me, because I think at a certain point, I'll call you whatever you want. I'll treat you however you want. But there's a reality that we all have to recognize, is that there are physical differences between the genders, and we can't just wake up one morning and claim to be the other gender and think that makes it all good, because there are consequences to doing that. And I think one of the major consequences is women's sports. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all the great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'll see you next time. Peace.